Hi guys, it's Nan here. So I've been asked by More Joy to sit down and talk to you a little bit about my experience of queer joy. So as a queer person of color, a queer African specifically, I'm constantly confronted with the misconception that queerness is inherently un-African and that it goes against tradition. It's seen as a Western import. Well, I want to argue that homophobia is actually the Western colonial import. Firstly, there's no shortage of queer African icons pre-colonialism. One of my personal favorites is Njinga of Ndongo and Mthembu, which are kingdoms located in modern-day Angola. Njinga fought many tactical wars against the Portuguese, rising from defeat by forming allyships, capturing the kingdom of Mthembu, and spreading their influence further afield. Njinga's role and status allowed them the space to perform their queerness. Njinga famously renounced their female identity, answering only to king. They wore traditional Ndongan clothing of both men and women and took male and female concubines. In wider Ndongan society existed Kimbandas. Kimbandans were third gender people who were assigned male at birth but existed in society as women, kind of similar to the Fa'afafini of Samoa. They married cis men, they wore female clothing, and they were referred to as grandmothers. Kimbandas are spiritual leaders, deeply involved in political and military decisions. How Njinga and wider Ndongan society viewed gender lent towards symbolism, situation, and role within society, and not only just personal differences in identity. These complex gender identities began to vanish as the Portuguese enforced Christianity onto the population and repressing African tradition. Closer to home, in South Africa, our culture is deeply rooted in nurturing and staying connected to our ancestors. Spirits of ancestors impart knowledge and help us find our path. A sense of self and self-expression exists within the spiritual connection. Our spiritual self gives space for gender fluidity and sexuality because we're drawn purely to specific ancestors in our lineage and also the people in our lives, whether that's masculine or feminine. It's not dependent on the physical. It's not like only cis men can connect to masculine spirits. Attraction to me comes from your energy and your spirit, and that's why I'd consider myself pansexual or having like an unlabeled sexuality. When I began to see gender as a spiritual and symbolic representation of me, I reveled in its subjectivity. This perspective felt more African, more relatable, and more me. Learning about queerness in Africa was so beneficial for me. Learning about different gender roles, societal structures, and like the unique spaces that allow for queerness to happen kind of gave me the power to just shake off the pressures of Western binary. I just realized that this is not the ultimate truth. There's so many different ways to understand gender and sexuality. And yeah, of course, not all populations across Africa and cultures were accepting of gender fluidity and queerness. But when we begin to decolonize the experience of queerness, I think we start to see its universality, its history, its malleability. The way that I experience queer joy is by embracing my Black identity. I want to celebrate that intersectionality. We're multifaceted human beings, and I think it can be very harmful to the Black community and also the queer community to try and compartmentalize my identities. They must exist in tandem. I think it's really empowering to speak Black queerness into existence, and I really take pride in connecting to African tradition. For me, Black joy is queer joy.